I guess I might start calling this channel Balance Tuning Bot, because apparently that's what we're doing nowadays. Blizzard continues to barrage us with a set of changes to specs and classes in Dragonflight Beta, so I guess we have to continue going through all of the changes that are happening in the beta. Today is a pretty big one. Today we have actually 8 specs, even 9 and 10 with some minor changes, and I say that overall it's a pretty balanced day because we have 4 meaningful specs getting buffed and 4 meaningful specs getting nerfed. So I'm gonna spoiler it already. There are no healers getting nerfed, but you're safe. You're also not getting buffed healers, so you're also not lucky to date. Also, I'm gonna spoil it even further. There are no tanks getting nerfed or buffed today. It's just a DPS day, okay? We are starting the DPS day with the first spec getting nerfed. This spec is very simple. This spec is not very complex. It's a very entry level spec played generally speaking by simpletons and 74 IQ players. Of course, I am talking about Havoc Demon Hunter. Yeah, that's of course the spec that gets nerfed today. It is not getting nerfed in anything particular, okay? They're not targeting a particular build or targeting a particular set of abilities. It's mostly across the board. I-beam damage, immolation damage, the hunt damage, and then you have Chaos Strike and of course Annihilation. You have Blade Dance and Death Sweep getting nerfed. You have the extra duration of Immolation Aura getting nerfed by 2 seconds. You have the damage of First Blood getting nerfed. You have the damage of Unbound Chaos, your AoE explosion after Fell Rush, also getting nerfed, and Inner Demon also getting nerfed. It's basically across the board where you see nerfs. There is one tiny positive, which I'm sure is not going to make up for what just happened to your spec, which is your defensive stuff, because in the General 3 you have Illidary Knowledge and Will of the Illidary Talents, the ones that reduce the damage you take and increase your max HP. Those get buffed. So you get a slight, tiny set of buffs to your defensives, but an overall broad set of nerfs to your actual damage as a Havoc Demon Hunter. Worth mentioning that a handful of these are also in the General 3, which means they are going to affect Vengeance Demon Hunter as well. Immolation Aura in the General 3, the Hunt in the General 3, those things are touching the damage of Vengeance as well. Now we go, instead of touching a single spec like Havoc, in touching a single class like Rogue. We have talked a few days ago about another very big set of changes to Rogues. In particular, there was the all damage done by assassination abilities reduced by 34%, which is very big. This was an aura modifier attached to the class and attached to the spec. Blizzard is reducing this modifier so that they can start buffing single abilities one by one, wherever they feel like they want to buff something. And that's what's happening today for many of the Rogue abilities. In the General 3, what you can get for all of the Rogue specs, you have Rapture, you have Ambush, you have Instant End Wound Poison, you have Shiv, Sepsis, and Echoing Reprimand, all getting buffed across the board. And then you go spec by spec. Many of the Assassination Rogue abilities are getting buffed. You have Garrote, you have Envenom, you have Mutilate, Fan of Knives, you have Deathmark, your new Vendetta ability, as well as Serrated Bone Spike, as well as Crimson Tempest and Kingsbane damage are all getting increased. So yes, you got nerfed by 34% in all of your damage, but now many of your most used abilities are getting buffed in return. There is also a particular happy change for Assassination, which doesn't have to do with numbers and damage. This one has to do with cooldown. Indiscriminate Carnage, your last capstone for AoE in the Assassination 3, the button that makes your next Garrote and Rapture hit 8 enemies, which is a massive AoE boost for Assassination, now has only a 1-minute cooldown, instead of having a 90-second cooldown. So you get a 50% discount on the cooldown as well, as part of your buffs package on this version of the Dragonflight Beta. Outlaw gets some very minor changes, a slight set of nerfs to the Dispatch finisher damage and pistol shot base damage, and a small revert on the energy gain nerf. One of the things we pointed out a few days ago about the rogue nerfs was how assassination and outlaw were also nerfed in their energy generation. Now the nerfs to combat potency and the nerfs to fatal flourish to generate energy for outlaw have been slightly buffed back. Still not as good as before, but not as bad as the original set of nerfs, and then a whole set of nerfs to roll the bones. Many of the buffs available to roll the bones have gotten nerfed in their effectiveness. But the main change in terms of nerfs is to subtlety. Because, as I just said, the energy nerfs last time were just to assassination and outlaw, not to subtlety. That's what subtlety gets today. Relentless strikes and improved shadow techniques, the two passives for subtlety to give you back energy, have both gotten nerfed. So the energy regen cap goes to hit the last of the rogue specs that was not touched yet in this type of nerfs. Now, enough with the nerfs. We have checked enough nerfs for the moment. Let's go to a happy place and look at the buffs instead. So, buffing begins in the Shaman class. Elemental and Enhancement are both getting buffed. Across the board, more or less. For Elemental, you have a 17% damage increase to your Lightning Bolt, which is great, and even a 20% damage increase to your Elemental Blast. Elemental Blast, whom also gets buffed in the stats you gain when you use it. Also, Earthshock, your spender, gets buffed by 5% in damage. Also, your liquid shit, Magma Totem, gets increased in damage by 125%. I am afraid this talent will still be garbage. It's even worse when it's a choice node. It's an option between this totem and Primal Elementalist to buff your elementals, so it's very unlikely it's gonna beat Primal Elementalist anyways. There is then also a slight nerf to Windspeaker's Lava Resurgence, which is one of your currently most used legendaries in Shadowlands. Now, the damage increase to your next Lava Burst is only 10% instead of 20%. The only bonus, the only benefit you get back is that now this talent can trigger with Earthquake as well. Previously, it was only triggering after you casted your single target spender, Earthshock or Elemental Blast. Now it can also trigger by using Earthquake. The larger set of buffs, however, lands on Enhancement. Now, it might be a little bit confusing at first because we are starting with just nerfs. Because the chance to proc your Maelstrom weapon goes down from 20% to 16%. The base damage of all of your Maelstrom weapon spenders is reduced by 10%, and even Doom Winds, your cooldown, gets nerfed. Now, the bonus damage to your Wind Fury weapon inside of Doom Winds is reduced from 25 to 10%, and much worse, the cooldown gets increased from 60 seconds to 90 seconds for Doom Winds. So, you know, Izen, I thought you said Elemental and Enhancement were getting buffed. Where are the buffs to Enhancement? Well, the buffs are that, number one, even though you get less chance to proc Maelstrom weapon and the spenders do less damage, Storm Strike itself is buffed in damage. Storm Strike does 20% more damage. You then have Wind Strike dealing 20% more damage. You have Ice Strike dealing 20% more damage. You have Sundering dealing 75% more damage. Fire Nova is doing 25% more damage. Storm's Wrath, the talent which increases the chance to proc your mastery, goes from 100% to 150%. The buff of your Feral Spirits and your Elemental Spirits goes from 15 damage increase to 20% damage increase. The speed with which you stack up the Storm Strike damage increase of your Crash Lightning effect is almost doubled. Previously, it was 15% damage increase to your next Storm Strike per stack, up to 10. Now it's 25% damage increase per stack up to 6. So it's almost twice as fast to stack up. We finish with the biggest change, which is the one to Lava Lash. We start with a nerf because your currently existing Shadowlands talent Hot Hand used to proc and give you 50 or 100% more damage to your next Lava Lash. Now it gets nerfed to give you 20 or 40% more damage to your next Lava Lash, which is a pretty big nerf. The reason why it's getting nerfed so much, it's because the damage of your Lava Lash is increased by 92%. So now you are basically almost casting 2 Lava Lashes at once in terms of damage. The damage is almost getting doubled from this set of buffs for enhancement. Overall, this nets out, even if you include the initial nerfs to enhancement, it nets out to be a clear set of buffs for the spec. I am, however, afraid we have to go back to nerfs. This time the nerfs go to a spec which seemingly can never quite get out of the meta, seemingly always finds a way to wriggle itself into the most played specs of a patch. I am talking about, of course, you know it, it's Fire Mage. We are talking about Fire Mage. Fire Mage is the spec that gets nerfed. Many of the things, this time talent effects centered around Pyroblast damage, centered around Ignite damage, are getting nerfed. The flat damage of Pyroblast, first of all, is nerfed by 10%. Feel the Burn is a talent which already got a significant nerf before, because before, Feel the Burn was known as Blaster Master. And we all know that Blaster Master is a much cooler name than Feel the Burn, so that's already a nerf in and of itself. The following nerf is that also now it gives you less mastery per stack compared to before. Tempered Flames gives you a massive set of nerfs to this ability. This was the weird ability which made your combustion much shorter, but empowered you outside of combustion much more. So now the reduction of the cast time of Pyroblast is only 30% instead of 40% faster to cast. Now the critical strike chance of Pyroblast is only 10% more instead of 15% more, and the duration of combustion is reduced by 50% now, instead of reducing it only by 40% with this talent. Pyroclasm also increases the damage of your Pyroblast by 230% when you hard cast it instead of 240%. Master of Flame. Now the base damage increase of your Ignite outside of combustion is 18% instead of 25%. Control Destruction increases the flat damage of your Pyroblast by 4 to 8% instead of 5 to 10%. Lastly, Wildfire increases the damage of your Ignite by 3 to 6% instead of 5 to 10. So a whole set of nerfs, primarily focusing the Ignite damage and the Pyroblast damage, as well as the, weird, by Shadowlands standards, weird non-combustion build of Fire Mage, non-hard-casted combustion build where you go outside of combustion and have much more consistent damage with Pyros and Ignites rather than doing burst damage inside of combustion. That is also getting hit quite hard for Fire Mage. Now, going away from a ranged spec, we are going to finish the list with a melee class. This is a class that has 2 DPS specs, of which one is getting buffed and the other one is getting nerfed. We are talking about Warrior, we're talking about Arms and Fury. The spec that is getting buffed is Arms. Not the right answer. It's Fury. Fury is the spec that gets buffed, and Arms is the one that gets nerfed. It is quite a big numbers salad for both specs. For Arms, you have your auto attack. This is perhaps the most important one, even though it seems very boring because doing auto attack damage is not very exciting, but it's a big part of the damage of Arms Warrior. Auto attack damage for Arms has been reduced by 25% instead of the previously 10% reduction. Arms also has nerfs to In for the Kill, giving you less haste than before. Skull Splitter in particular has been significantly nerfed. 22% less damage to Skull Splitter and 50% less rage generated by Skull Splitter. You have a 3% damage nerf to Mortal Strike and 5% damage nerf to Execute for Arms, finishing off with nerfs to Juggernaut as well as Deep Wounds, periodic damage and Rend periodic damage. Quite heavy. Honestly, if you're just looking about tiny numbers changes, these are perhaps the most hurtful of the tiny numbers happening for today. They are hitting quite some big parts of the overall Arms Warrior damage. Then the complete opposite happens to Fury. Many other tiny damage numbers increased for Fury. You have Bloodthirst dealing 7% more damage. You have the Bloodthirst crit chance increase being buffed with Blood Craze. You have the damage increase of Bloodborne going from 15 to 20%. You have the Raging Blow and Crushing Blow having 3% more damage per each strike, as well as buffs to Wrath and Fury and to Slaughtering Strikes. Of particular effectiveness is the buff to Slaughtering Strikes, the one that makes your Raging Blow hits increase the damage of your next Rampage by 10%. Now becoming 20% more damage to Rampage, because of course Rampage is a big part of your overall damage as a Fury Warrior, so it's always very important and very meaningful to see damage buffs to your biggest damaging abilities. So at the end of the list, as I said, we did have roughly 4 specs getting nerfed in the form of Arms Warrior, Havoc, Demon Hunter, Fire Mage, and Subtlety Rogue. Technically speaking, even Outlaw, you know, maybe 2 of them combined. And then the 4 specs being overall buffed. You had Fury Warrior getting buffed, you had Enhancement, Elemental, as well as Assassination Rogue, overall getting buffed for today. As I said before, and I will keep reminding everyone, for all we know, Fire Mage is getting nerfed, Elemental Shaman is getting buffed, but Fire Mage is doing 30% more damage than Elemental. And after this set of changes, Fire Mage will be doing 20% more damage than Elemental. So maybe in the future you will see even more nerfs to Fire Mage and even more buffs to Elemental, but that's because we have no way to see how they currently are. Because you guys would be much more shocked if you saw Destruction Warlock getting buffed and Shadow Priest getting nerfed in Shadowlands. Why? Because you already know. You already know the place of Destruction in the meta, and you already know the place of Shadow Priest in the meta. So it would make much less sense to see those changes, while in the beta things are much more volatile, things are much less understood and discovered and known compared to the current version of the game. So we will continue to see several changes without still having too clear of a picture for a while at least. I'm gonna assume throughout the entirety of October until the first week or so of November, as we get 20 days or so away from the release of the expansion, is when you start getting a very clear picture. You can start actually trying to predict what could become very, very good at the start of the expansion, or what could be still quite bad at the start of Dragonflight. But for now, I wouldn't be too worried if you're getting nerfed in any of these set of changes, or if you're getting buffed in any of these set of changes. I wouldn't be too excited either until I actually know and I can actually start comparing each of the specs to see exactly where they stand. At the moment, we can stop here for today for the set of changes of the balance tuning in Dragonflight. Of course, as usual, a big round of applause to all of my Patreon supporters for helping me and allowing me to continue to produce WoW content as we keep getting deeper in the beta of Dragonflight. Also, you can support in other ways that don't include money, like I would do, being lazy and greedy. You can like and comment down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. These methods are still completely free. Lastly, for more social interactions and general simping, you can follow me on Twitter, as well as subscribing to my Patreon, which will give you access to my Discord server right over at these 2 links. And we are done. Yeah, we are done for today. I'm gonna leave you to the rest of your weekend. Thank you guys for watching. See you guys soon. And in the meantime, I have to go and shop for groceries today because it's the end of the week. I'm gonna stock up and try to last 3 to 4 days without having to go out again, because I am allergic to the sun, generally speaking.